Stressed about the quarantine? I know I am. It's a stressful time. The coronavirus is stressful. Being cooped up at home is stressful. Funny enough, though, we very seldom think about stress and kids. Yes, kids are capable of feeling stressed. And even the cutest of kid, when stressed, can go from looking like this to looking like this. I don't know. Looks pretty stressed out to me. What do you think? See? Told you so. Stress can happen to anyone, even cute unicorns. Before we dive into the talk, though, I guess let me introduce myself if you're not familiar with my channel or with who I am. So my name is Dr. Brett Pierce, and I am a practicing child psychologist in Salt Lake City, Utah. And before we dive into the topic for today, we always like to talk about the 3 T's for this video. And this first T is indeed tea, as in the drink. Black currant tea is what I'm drinking today. Out of my really cool, like, Batman mug thing. Looks kind of like a comic book. I don't know. It's cool. Love Batman. The second T, and you already met him or her. I guess I don't really know. And that's this, cute and then scary unicorn thing. Love this toy. Love unicorns, actually. And then finally, the third T is the talk. And the talk for today is the subject of kids and stress during the coronavirus crisis, particularly when we're on quarantine. Now, a lot of people, interestingly enough, are very surprised to hear me talk about the subject of stress and kids. And it's almost like there's this inclination out there that kids really don't deal with stress, or that if they do, it's just so uncommon and small of a problem as to basically not be worth considering. But the truth is, kids have every much a capacity to deal with too much stress and to struggle with stress, as do adults. And so it's really important for us to pay attention to that, because everyone's stress levels right now in these strange time, everyone's stress levels are very, very high. It's a very important time in the world, I guess, and there's a lot going on. And so what I'm wanting to do primarily in this video is to encourage people to really pay attention to their own stress levels as well as the stress levels of their kids, particularly as we're all home, or a lot of us are home, and we're sort of all on top of each other, and our entire routine and almost the whole world has been disrupted. And so stress is going to be a very big factor. But just to illustrate this point, the biggest thing that I notice with people and stress and thinking about kids and stress is that we tend to kind of ignore the subject and focus mostly on like behaviors and tasks and things like that. So to illustrate this point, why don't we dive into a bit of an example? So let's suppose that we had 8-year-old Bobby, and 8-year-old Bobby, like I think almost every single kid in America, is home, and maybe there's a couple siblings at home. Mom and dad are home from work because of the coronavirus. Everyone's routine's disrupted. Bobby's stress levels are already pretty high just because of nervousness about what's going on, nervousness about getting sick, nervousness about someone in his family or maybe one of his friends getting sick. Speaking of his friends, he's probably not really able to see them too much right now because of the quarantine. And so maybe what we start to see happen is that Bobby is more irritable than he normally would be. Maybe he is struggling with some more misbehaviors than he normally would be. He's not listening as well as he normally might be. He loses his temper more easily than maybe he normally would. And maybe he's even doing some kind of like sort of mysterious misbehaviors. Like we find him up at night, getting into things that he shouldn't be getting into. And maybe his sleep is even disturbed. So it'd be very easy for us as adults to be in what I like to call misbehavior mode, which is to say we're just focusing on the misbehaviors, and we're consequencing them, we're problem solving them. I mean, problem solving is great. Sometimes consequences are fine. I'm usually not the biggest fan, but they have their place. But we're focusing only on kind of like the surface level, I guess. if we wanted to put it in those terms. And we're not really thinking in terms of stress, because there's a good chance that just stress is really driving a lot of Bobby's problems. And the issue is when we focus too much on misbehaviors and things like that. Oh, you're not getting your schoolwork done. I'm taking your phone away, or your Nintendo Switch away until you get your schoolwork done. Oh, you're fighting with your siblings. You don't get any treats later because you're fighting. When we do that, it acts as sort of a distraction for everyone involved, and frankly, including us, but certainly for Bobby. Because the truth is, not many people really like to slow down and kind of sink down into thinking about things. And I don't mean sink down in a bad way, but to kind of drop down and go, oh, wow, maybe we're not feeling good right now. Like maybe our feelings are not doing too good. Maybe Bobby's feelings aren't doing too good. I like to think in terms of a stress budget in general. And I sometimes will use the expression spending stress. Like I might say to myself, well, yeah, I do want to do that, but at the same time, I don't think I have the stress to spend on that right now. That's a subject for another video. But it just proves the point that you can only handle so much of the time. And we all need to manage stress, and kids are no different. And so with Bobby in this example, it might be important for us to not worry as much about the misbehaviors with, a lot of immediacy or urgency, but instead to kind of slow down and go, okay, Bobby, it just doesn't seem like you're feeling too good. Like, what's going on for you? What can we do to help you feel better? Because if we focus too much on kind of through the misbehaviors and tackling the misbehaviors, which sometimes has its place, then we can easily miss out on an opportunity, and we might actually be contributing to stress rather than helping to alleviate it. So what are some things that might help your kid alleviate stress? Well, I don't know. It kind of depends on your kid and depends on the circumstances. But things like having enough alone time, if they're that kind of a kid where they just need sort of alone time. Maybe things like having special time with parents to sit down and just play without really being instructed or questioned or redirected unless absolutely necessary. Maybe plenty of time to run around and be noisy and loud and silly. Maybe making a point of getting on FaceTime or Google Meeting or whatever with friends so that we can check in with friends. Maybe writing letters to people that he's missing and worried about. The point is, there's all kinds of things we can do. It's not really about the exact thing that you're doing in terms of this video right now. More my point is, please pay attention to stress right now. We're all stressed out. Personally, I can almost feel it in the air. Every time you turn on the TV or pull open a social media app, everything is about the coronavirus, which is understandable. Everything's about how many people are getting sick and dying, how many economies are suffering. All these things are very real and important, and they're very stressful. And kids just classically are not that good at tracking their own emotional states and operating from that kind of a standpoint, which is to say, wow, my feelings are not doing good. What do I want to do about that? And so we adults need to try to do that with them and for them. And, sometimes doing this also helps many of the parents that I work with do it for themselves. Like, it's not uncommon when I bring this subject up that parents come back to me and say, I realize that my stress levels have been pretty high and I've just been kind of sort of ignoring that. It happens, when we're busy and stressed out, it's easy to kind of lose track of this way of thinking. So at any rate, thank you for listening. This has been another video on just some ideas for dealing with the quarantine and the coronavirus. Specifically, we've talked a lot about stress and kids, with the most important point being, please pay attention to this subject, the subject of stress, be aware of it, and just try to think of what we can do to try to help manage stress. Because if your kids are struggling with a lot of misbehaviors right now during the coronavirus crisis and the quarantine, there's a good chance that stress is a big factor. So before we sign off, thanks so much everyone for all the positive feedback I've been getting and all the new subscribers. It means a lot to me. Speaking of subscription, if you have not subscribed, please feel free to smash that button down below It really helps out the channel. Otherwise, this is Dr. Brett Pierce, child psychologist, signing off and hoping that everyone stays safe and healthy during these very strange times. Thank you. Bye-bye.